Wave after wave of people came out onto the streets like mine to celebrate the Queen's Silver Jubilee. My dad was a Czech Jew. He came here in 1938 to escape the terror of the Nazis. He couldn't have been more grateful or proud of the tolerance and the opportunity that this country gave him. My mum was a middle-class Church of England clothes buyer from Bromley. Together they nurtured my sister and me with stubborn optimism, a quiet confidence that better days lie ahead. In those Silver Jubilee street parties, families like mine, in streets like ours, in neighbourhoods right across the country, flocked together to reaffirm our love of this country's values. And even in tough times, we showed we're bigger than the sum of our parts. Not for the first time, that spirit, that national spirit, saw us through. The country rebounded economically under Margaret Thatcher. We rediscovered our sense of national self-confidence. Today, despite all of the instability, our economy has proved pretty resilient. But now we're standing at another historic crossroads. We've been humiliated as a country in these talks with the EU. Let's be honest about it. We're divided at home. We've been demeaned abroad. We face the real threat of a hard-left Labour government under Jeremy Corbyn, a man who gives succour to the very racism my father fled, a man who would take us back to that state socialism that failed in the 1970s, someone who would threaten the living standards of everyone in this country and would hit the poorest the hardest. Now I get asked this question, and the reason I've put myself forward to be Prime Minister at this time is because it hurts me to see our country laid low like this. I want to see this great country get back on its feet and stand tall in the world, not cower before Brussels. We've suffered a loss of nerve. We need new leadership. And that leadership needs to be bold, infused with some of that stubborn optimism. This is a crossroads in our history. We're on the cusp of momentous change. One thing I know, we can't just keep limping on like this without a clear sense of direction and without a clear sense of purpose. The tired approach that got us into this mess is not going to get us out of it. So we've got to use this contest and the next election to define the change that we all want in this room, that we want in this country. So I'm offering change. A change of vision and a generational change in leadership. I'm the candidate who can be trusted to deliver on Brexit and then unite our party behind an optimistic vision, fitting for our great country and worthy of our great people. A vision that all of us in the Conservative Party can feel good about. A vision that all of us in this country can feel good about. And a vision that will light our path to winning the next election. But first off, we've got to deliver Brexit. Until we've done that, nothing else will count. If the European elections and the Peterborough by-election taught us anything, it's that we've got to keep our promises on Brexit as a matter of trust in our democracy, and frankly now as a matter of the survival of our party. The 2016 referendum must be respected. We Conservatives, we must honour our manifesto pledge. We've got to keep our word. Because if we don't, we'll never move on from Brexit onto all of those other things that I think all Conservatives yearn for us to be taking up and moving forward. We won't do any of that unless and until we've delivered on our promises on Brexit. That's why we need leadership with conviction. But we also need leadership with the focus and the discipline to navigate what will be a rocky path ahead until the end of October. Now, in that recent BBC documentary with Michel Barnier and Guy Verhofstadt, they complained that as Brexit Secretary, I turned up to Brussels to negotiate each week. They said I pushed them too hard. They said I told them things that no one else had ever dared. Well, about time too. Yeah. The truth is, I just made clear we couldn't accept that backstop, and that our future relationship must be based on a best-in-class free trade agreement, not the cage of a customs union. I offered constructive solutions. I predicted the deal would be rejected if we didn't secure them. And ultimately, I resigned because I wasn't in good conscience, willing to walk a bad deal over the line. If we'd had a united team, if we'd held the line, I know we'd have already left the EU on acceptable terms by now. But we are where we are, and it's not a good place. We're up against it. And we won't deliver Brexit with bluff and bluster. I'm the conviction Brexiteer with a plan, the discipline and the focus to lead us out by the end of October. I'm the Brexiteer that you can rely on. I'd return to Brussels. I'd make a best final offer to replace that backstop with the Malthouse Compromise based on and relying on technology, operational cooperation and global practice. And with goodwill on all sides, it can be made to work in everyone's interests. And of course, it's the only solution MPs have actually backed. But we won't be taken seriously in Brussels unless we're clear we're willing to walk away on WTO terms, if the EU refuses to budge. So to deliver Brexit, I'd put together a cabinet reflecting the different views we have across our party, but I'd insist that this team is united in its resolve to deliver Brexit by the end of October. I would restore collective responsibility, which has been missing in government for far too long. Next, I'd bring forward a Brexit budget to boost UK businesses through what is undoubtedly a period of uncertainty. And if we're forced by EU stubbornness, if it's their choice that we leave on WTO terms, we can draw from that £39 billion budgeted for the Brexit deal to help businesses through what is undoubtedly a transition. We've had an extra 6 months to prepare. And as the Institute for Government recently reported, it's near impossible, their words, near impossible for MPs to stop a Prime Minister who is seriously determined to leave in this way. Now let me just be clear with all of you. I don't want a WTO departure. I want a deal. But the lesson that I learned from 6 years negotiating as a Foreign Office negotiator and lawyer, and my time as Brexit Secretary, is that we won't get a deal. We won't even give ourselves a shot of a deal unless the EU knows that we're willing to walk away. And above all, we've got to put an end to this draining uncertainty for the sake of businesses that need direction and for the sake of voters' trust in our democracy. This isn't the moment for foghorn diplomacy. This is the moment for calm, steely determination. It's time to take our country forwards, not backwards. Forwards to grasp the opportunities of Brexit and to refocus on all those other challenges we must rise to as a country. That starts by winning the battle of ideas again, making the case for the value of the free enterprise economy to create the jobs and provide the revenue for our precious public services. I'd lead a buccaneering approach to global free trade, to help small businesses export to new markets, to create new jobs, and to ease the cost of living by cutting tariffs. Now, this vision is not just about money. It touches our identity as individuals and also, I think, as a country. My wife Erica's from Brazil, and I've got 2 Brazilian boys at home. They're 6 and 4, Peter and Joshua. I have to tell you, with a Brazilian wife, I get pretty nervous when the World Cup comes around. So I brought them an England football kit. I'll probably get in trouble with Emily Thornberry. She may report me to social services, who knows. And Erica returned fire buying them a Brazilian strip, and I realised I really feared the writing was on the wall. So I decided to grasp the nettle, and I took Peter, who was only 5 at the time, Paul Might, and I took him to one side and I said, "Son, you've got a really big decision to make, possibly the biggest in your life so far. What's it going to be? Who are you going to support? England or Brazil?" And he's quite a thoughtful soul, and he took himself off, took 10 minutes to think about it. And then he kind of came back looking rather earnest and said, "I've made my decision. I'm going to be supporting them 50-50. And then there's a pause and he says, but I think I'll be supporting England in the first half of the competition. I could hear my wife from the other room say, not another politician in the family. I love my country with a passion. I want my children to have a strong British identity, but I also want them to have global horizons. I want that for my boys, I want that for our country. And being proud to be British means we've got to make the case for the union. From the tech startups in Bristol to the thriving trade of Aberdeen's harbours, from the creative and digital hubs at Belfast universities to the family farmers I recently met down in Monmouthshire with TC. We should stand proudly together. We should embrace the global opportunities together, not sit back and take a devolve and forget approach to defending the union, especially when we make the case for the union up in Scotland. And we've got to look to the future. We've got to leave the environment in a better state than when we found it. The Luddite Labour Party, they're not going to come up with credible answers to the challenge of climate change. That's left to us. That's for us as Conservatives. We've got to harness the power of innovation and technology to forge an energy policy that makes environmental and economic sense. I'd increase the tax credit for larger companies investing in research and development by 1% from 12% to 13%. I'd promote the UK as a world leader in green innovation through a national energy research centre. To provide that leadership by bringing together our world-beating scientists with our world-beating businesses, to pioneer the green innovation of the future. And because this is a shared global challenge, I'd refocus up to £500 million from our aid budget to create a UK International Nature Fund, to boost biodiversity, to promote preservation of endangered species and wildlife conservation. As Conservatives, we must lead that change. We must own it. But you know, there's one challenge Ed Miliband and Jeremy Corbyn have been half right about, even if their answers are all wrong. Too often, for too many people today, capitalism looks like some kind of stitch-up amongst the corporate vested interests. Under my leadership, we'd be unflinching champions of the economic little guy. Because I believe capitalism is there to serve the innovative startup, the striving worker who hasn't had a pay rise in several years, and the hard-pressed consumer who's feeling the pinch of the cost of living. I want a fairer deal for workers, and I'm on the side of the lowest paid, not the wealthy. So I'd raise the threshold for national insurance employees' contributions to take the lowest paid out of payroll taxes altogether. That's a pay rise. That's a pay rise for the nurse getting up at 5 a.m. to catch the bus to work. That's the pay rise for the dad flipping burgers until late, saving to take his family on holiday. I want them to know that we as Conservatives, I want them to know that we're on their side. And if, like me, you believe that true capitalism is a force for good, there's a revolution just waiting to happen. Now, I started off my career as a business lawyer doing competition law. And I think today, too often, we have allowed big business to crush the competition and to rip off consumers. So from energy bills to the cost of broadband, I'd lead a revolution in competition policy to smash the monopolies, to liberate the startups, and to strengthen consumer clout. And just think about it. This isn't small change for the teenager hunting for a cheap mobile phone bill or deal. It's not short change or small change for the pensioners pinched by their gas bill as they struggle to make ends meet. We can save consumers, from the student to the pensioner, hundreds of pounds each year. We can show the people reading Which magazine or hunting for bargains on Money Supermarket that we're on their side. So if I become Prime Minister, I'll make the consumer king. And I believe in free enterprise because, not despite being a compassionate Conservative. Our first instinct must be to protect the most vulnerable in our society. And that means never letting there be any doubt that we'll remain the party of the NHS, delivering an extra £20 billion of funding through our long-term plan. We've got to drive forward, not retreat, on the reform of social care, based on, in my view, Andrew Dilnot's proposals. So we look after our elderly with love and care in a sustainable way for the future. And I'd also put the protection of expecting and new mums and their babies at the very top of my priorities for the NHS. And the new mission for our party, the very reason that I went into politics in the first place, is the change our society is just crying out for. When I was first elected in 2010, I became a volunteer and then a trustee at Fight for Peace. It's a boxing and martial arts academy down in Newham, one of the toughest boroughs in London. But it's got an inspirational record of giving young people from really tough backgrounds an opportunity, a second chance. Now, they don't meet a lot of Conservatives down there, but I learnt a lot from them. And I mentored one lad who'd been inside for armed robbery, and I'll never forget him. He told me his story, and you could see he was a brave risk taker. You could even say entrepreneurial. It wasn't channeled in the right direction, but this lad had a real spark about him. Fight for Peace gave him, and many others like him, the benefits of sport, but also a second chance to pass his English and Maths GCSE. A chance to have their character nurtured, to find training or a job, a ladder of opportunity for thousands of youngsters whose talent is just waiting to be tapped. We must make much better use of grassroots organisations like Fight for Peace so that we tap those young people that Whitehall fails and we give them their chance to make the very best of their talents. Now, I take a typically robust approach to law enforcement. I want to see more police numbers, more flexibility on stop and search. I think if you carry a knife, you should end up in prison. But I also believe in a second chance society. Because I want those young people I met at Fight for Peace, kids who are standing at the crossroads of their lives, I want them to know that we're on their side. I want us to build a meritocratic society that lets loose the aspirational underdog, that breathes hope into the lives of the kid with big dreams, whether they're on the council estate or the rural backwater. I want us to build on our educational reforms so that every child in every state school can flourish. And we've got to forget that snobbery that Labour instilled that says university is the only route to being a success in life. Just think of the opportunities to go further with vocational training, boosting degree apprenticeships and non-graduate routes into the professions, qualifications that industry, that business are crying out for. Because not every young person with big ambitions learns best with their heads stuck in academic books. Now, for me, the tragedy at the last election is that too many young voters just didn't dream their dreams with us as Conservatives. Let's face it, housing was a big part of that. We've got to convince the young couple starting out in life, who want to start a family, who want to get on the housing ladder, that will build the homes that they can actually afford, that will deliver the property-owning democracy that they believe, if they put in the hard graft, is their birthright, the Conservative dream. And yet, today, too many young people who work hard and save just haven't got a hope of getting on the housing ladder. Not a hope. How would you all feel today if you had to start out in life again? We've got to be the government that builds the homes young people can afford. We've got to make it happen. We've got to show those younger voters that we are really on their side. And what all of this is about is fairness. The people we need to reach, that's all they ask for. A chance to make the best of themselves. A fairer deal for those people who get up to work every morning by cutting their taxes and ending consumer rip-offs. A fairer society so everyone gets their shot, no matter what their start in life. And a fairer deal from Brussels for the British people who have been written off by far too long. Now, people talk about the state of our party and they say the fire is all snuffed out. well, we're certainly going to need some of that stubborn optimism. But I know that together we can rekindle our vision of the aspirational society. And with the oxygen of the enterprise economy, we can turn that spark into a flame. And if we back the economic little guy, we can nurture that flame into a fire. And with the power of hope and the dream of a fairer society, we can fuel that fire into a roaring furnace, so that Britain shines as a beacon of opportunity for everyone who calls this great country home. That's how we take Britain forward, and that's how we win the next election. Thank you all very much.